Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Enjoy the Book of Life. We're here with Andrew Harmon on a very interesting topic. And Andrew, you've got a pretty cool connection to this one. Talking about, let's jump into talking about Harmon games. What is it? How did it all get started? And what's available? What is Harmon games?
Yeah, so I I've always enjoyed designing games ever since I was about 6 years old. And Harmon Games got started, which spoiler alert, I'm Andrew Harmon, so Harmon Games is just because my last name is Harmon. But I started Harmon Games because I had a game I wanted to create, and I enjoyed it playing it. So I thought, well, maybe other people would enjoy it too. And so Harmon Games started when I published my first game, which was Portals and Prophets, and that was in 2018. And that was a game that was inspired after going to Israel and seeing kind of the geography of Israel and
Mm,
thinking about. I kind of pictured a game where the board was a map of Israel, and
yeah.
you're traveling around trying to witness different biblical events. And so as you play, you don't have to know anything about the geography to play, but you kind of pick up on like, oh, I have to go to Hebron or I have to go to Jezreel to play this event card because I'm trying to like witness these different events. And so you kind of like you start to learn these locations and these events when they happen. That's the other aspect of the game is you have to be at the correct location, but also at the correct time in history.
Yeah.
So you're learning a little bit about the history of these events, like the ordering of when they occurred, and also where they happened. And so that um, kind of learning through like hardly feeling like you're learning uh, kind of appealed to me, and I think a lot of other people would enjoy playing this game with their friends and maybe whether it's church setting or not. I mean, you can honestly, you wouldn't even have to be a Christian to enjoy the game. You wouldn't
Good.
have to know
Yeah.
anything about the Bible to play the game. You know?
And just that, I think I like that component to it, where you're saying it's not it's still a game. A game, it involves strategy. It's fun, a whole group of you trying to win, right? It's competitive.
Right.
But this underlying you might not even notice. You start to know where Hebron is after the
Right.
third time playing the game. You don't have to search the map. You know where Hebron is, and you know
Right.
where Bethany or Jerusalem or Caesarea by the sea. You start to get a feel for it as you play it, which I think is a
Yeah.
good component.
Yeah. And I will say after creating the game, I knew the geography of Israel way better than when I started
Yeah.
creating the game. Like now I can like picture exactly where all these places are on the map, you know?
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, so that was the first game. And I kind of like been designing games off and on, but as far as publishing games, I just published my second game, which was called King of Glory, the card game, and it's
Hmm.
based off of the book King of Glory, which was written by Paul Bramson. And I worked with Paul Bramson for several years, turning the book into a film. And so I'm pretty closely connected with that project. And I was just talking with Paul, I guess it was maybe a year ago, and he's like, "Have you ever thought about making a game for this?" And I had thought about it, but not like deeply, not to the point where I actually was gonna actually try to make this a reality. But then after that, I thought about it a lot more. It's like, you know what? I think I could, and I knew that for this game, I wanted it to target the same demographic that the book does, which is really all ages, because
Yeah.
the book really, I mean, a 5 year old can enjoy it or a 95-year old.
Yeah.
It's very accessible to a large age range. So I'm like, I feel like that the same people that like the book should be able to play the game.
Right.
So
Yeah.
the game actually doesn't have any words in it that you would have. So someone could actually play it even if they couldn't read, which makes it language independent. But
Oh,
the cards
that's good.
Yeah,
Because King of Glory, that's one of the big pushes with King of Glory is
right.
it's translated into so many different languages.
Yeah,
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 that's great. I didn't know that. That's good.
yeah. So but on the cards, there's symbols. So each card is an image that's in the book. So it kind of connects with a different chapter in the book. But on the cards are, I call them in the game, it's called connections. And so each card has a matching card to it, and that has the same symbol on it, the same connection.
Uh-huh.
And so it's like a thematic connection between the two cards, and it's a connection that's made in the book. So,
Okay.
for example, there's a card where it talks about it's a picture of Adam reaching out to a thorn bush, and then it connects with the card where Jesus is crowned with thorns. And so the connection in the book is that um, Christ took on the curse,
Yeah.
and the thorns were part of that curse.
Yeah.
So even though there's no words in the game, if someone wanted to, they could use it as a springboard. I was like, talk about what are the connections between these cards.
Right. Right.
But you could also just play the game, you
Yeah.
know. So so that anyway, that's the most recent one. And then there's one that I've been working on for a while, and it's a little bit of a more complicated gamer type game, but it's
Yeah.
called Parable Kingdom. And that one is based off of Jesus' parables. You actually are playing as one of the stewards that's been given talents.
Okay.
And your job is the king's gone away and he's coming back at some point. And if you have done the best job stewarding your talents uh, at the end of the game, then you win. But
Okay.
during the game, you're traveling around this board, which is called Parable Kingdom. And so each location is connected with a different parable.
Okay.
And so it's another one of those things where it's not necessarily it's not like there's a ton of text. And in the rule book there will be like a section where it can talk about each of the different locations and why does what you do in the game connect with the parable.
Okay.
So for
Okay.
example, there's a location that's the vineyard, and the people that everyone gets paid the same amount of talents if you go there, but the people that come later get shown more favor.
Okay.
So yeah, so you get more favor when you come later on.
Yeah.
So and of course people are like, well, that doesn't seem fair.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, that's kind of the point.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. But there's all kinds of stuff like that in the game. There's like you can take the seat of honor, but if at the end of the
Right.
game someone else has more reputation than you do, you have to give up the seat of honor, and
Okay.
you take a penalty. Yeah. So
Good.
all kinds of
Good.
stuff like that. It's a lot of Easter eggs, I guess.
Yeah.
Is the way I would explain it.
Good.
But
I like in each of those you've got the connections. It ties with the game, the content of the game. But in all of them, even in the Portals and Prophets, where it's linked with the geography, you've allowed it, because it's so intricately connected, you're allowing those who want to pursue that to pursue it and benefit from it. Whereas if you just want to play the game, you're going to get a bit of that content regardless. But really, you're opening a buffet, and you can eat as much as you'd like. You don't have to. You don't have to get a full meal. But it's there as a resource and a learning experience.
yeah, and I do want to say I think that's actually a better way to learn than a lot of these games that are, for example, just trivia games,
Yeah.
because for a lot of people, I mean, there are some people that genuinely love trivia games, and that's like a subset. And those people, they have plenty of those,
Yeah.
you know. But you in these trivia games, like a lot of people don't really enjoy them, so they don't really play them that often. So if you have a game that's really fun, people want to pull out and play, it gets played more often. So which one's better? A game that sits on the shelf that supposedly has all this knowledge that you can glean from it, but if
Yeah.
you don't get it out and play it, then it's useless. So I think first and foremost, games have to be fun, otherwise they don't get played.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think it's just if it's you're looking for the fun first, and then people are along for the ride, and then they get the other stuff as
Yeah.
they're playing.
Yeah. Yeah, I really I like that. Now, when it comes to the content, right, the learning content that you've incorporated, how much of it do you go into it? So when you're designing the game, how much do you balance kind of the strategy of it with the learning experience? How does that all work in together?
You're saying the strategy versus the educational part.
Right, right.
Okay. So I guess my first focus is making sure that it's a good strategy game, but I want it to make sure that that well, it's I say each game is a little bit different. So like with Portals and Profits, with the board that you're traveling around, I mean, it was very important to me to make sure that like the locations were accurate, that the
Yeah,
events were, you know, as accurate as possible, like when they happened. Um, trying to figure out like which events should be included, which one shouldn't, because there was some that like probably the main reason they are in there is for the game purposes. It's like, well, we really need another event to happen in this area of the board,
yeah,
to kind of balance it out. But then there's other ones where you're like, you know, yes, we have a gazillion locations already in Jerusalem, but this one's also very important
right.
just from a biblical point of view. So it needs to be in there too. So
Yeah.
there is a little bit of a balancing in that respect. And I guess it's a
It
little bit like that with everything. I mean, like with the parable game, you might have a cool game mechanic, but if you can't make it fit with the parable, then I keep looking.
Right, right. And
Yeah,
it seems like those little Easter eggs tie in with that underlying meaning. So again,
right,
you can play the game and figure out the mechanics of it. But as you eventually, through repetition, playing the game, you're going to say, I don't want to be there first there. And
right.
you're linking the content with the game strategy. So I think just how those go hand in hand work really well. And again, with the card game, finding those connections, like this is one of the things that I talk most in Bible study, finding these connections that the scripture is a whole body of truth. And to see these connections is such a valuable thing in our Bible study. And so in the book, Paul Bramson has gone to the effort to make these connections, to show this, and then you're simply relaying that through the card game.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think that's excellent. So at this point, I think talking about different learning methods, you've been talking about how this has been incorporating that fun aspect to it. I think that's interesting. In education, it's what we call like an anticipatory set. And this idea that if I can make people want to learn what I want to teach, it makes my job infinitely more easier.
Yeah.
If I make you want to learn, and so it is kind of with these games where you're saying, here's a game you can play and have fun with, and then along with it you have that content, something exciting ties in. um I think with uh some other examples when you're coming into like a Bible study method, one of the things that we do down here in Mississippi is we have the text. We're going through Mark right now, and we've got the text printed out
Yeah.
for them and little activities to do. One of them is like finding connections. How does this link with last week's passage?
Mhm.
What other passages do you know about? How does this connect to you? How does this connect to the world around you? And they're little activities, but at the end of the lesson, sometimes I sit there and think, well, we never got to this. I never got to teach this. But that's the point. The focus of that Bible study is not for me to teach everything I've ever heard about this passage, the focus is for them to actually study the passage,
Yeah.
for everyone there to make their own connections, for them to do, ask their own questions, to identify the repeated words, to those sorts of things. So when it comes to these alternative teaching styles, it's more rare, when we're talking about teaching Bible content.
Yeah.
A lot of times we're used to kind of a direct instruction, a sermon. Someone stands up there and they teach. And I think that's great for certain things. I think it's the best for certain things. Like if I want to do the overview of Romans, to do it the way we do in the Bible study is going to take us months, right?
Yeah.
But for someone who's studied it for years of their life, and to get up and present that, it can be enormously helpful. But these other ways, like you're presenting with these games, I think is so valuable, because it's not always the best to just have a talking head.
Right. Yeah, I'm assuming they probably have done studies to show how effective different methods are in conveying information. But I feel like even without a study, just intuitively, you'd be like, okay, I know at least for me, um, and I know there's different types of learners, the way people learn too. Like I do learn more from doing something than hearing something. I'm probably more visual, that like seeing something is better than just hearing something as well. So there's different learning styles. I mean, there's different methods that work better for different people, but I would say there's some things, information, if you want to convey it for just about anybody, it'd be better to do it more of a hands-on way than just a lecture style. But
yeah. And again, like if you're doing a skill, something like how to counsel someone or how to visit someone, this idea of visitation, very good biblical skill. There are probably things you need to do in lecture format, teaching. I've been to seminars about visitation, some very helpful ones. But if I don't ever go visit someone, right, and I don't actually see someone do it and model it for me, where I can learn that way, I don't think it's going to be as effective. And so I think,
imagine if you learned that a doctor had only just been to a
yeah,
lecture.
exactly,
Like,
yeah,
not sure if you want them operating on you, but
no, yeah, that's exactly right. So I think it's great you're exploring these different modes, these different avenues for instruction. And again, I like how you balance the two, where you're working with specific content. You want the cities accurate, you want the parables accurate and the meanings of the parables accurate, but then you're balanced it with an enjoyable experience that will keep the person coming back over and over to play the game.
right.
Yeah, good. So what do you think are the biggest benefits to it not being a formal setting? We've been talking about this kind of the more direct instruction
Right.
of how people teach. But this is far from that. You're sitting around the table, maybe with friends, maybe with family. What do you see as the biggest benefits of that with these games?
I think that I think it has helped with remembering what you do learn too. I do think by going through doing some kind of action, like a little more proactive, um, like like in the portals and prophets, you're like, I'm going to Jerusalem. I'm going to play, you know, Jesus is crucified or whatever. Like I'm going to play this event card, and I'm going there. Like you feel like you don't feel like you just took a track necessarily, but it is like it's a little bit more hands-on. So I do think that helps with the retention a little bit.
I mean, even
And
just even just traveling from north to south, if I'm in Bethesda and I'm moving to Jerusalem, I'm by moving my little game piece, I'm making that trek.
Yeah, and it really does feel like, wow, it's quite a journey. I just spent, 2 whole turns trying to get up there, you
Right.
know? Yeah. Unless you happen to be on a portal, because it is called Portals and Prophets, and you can jump in a portal and teleport to the north if,
Right.
but
A
that's
little bit
besides.
of traveling like Philip the Evangelist there.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Traveling in the spirit. That's what I should have called it. Yeah. Uh, Missed opportunities. Maybe the next edition,
Yeah.
we can fix that. Yeah. Well, I also think that one benefit of these games is it does introduce some of these things to people that might not be introduced to them otherwise.
Yeah.
Because I mean, there's a lot of people that will play a game that won't necessarily sit through a lecture on on this topic,
Yeah.
or maybe isn't even really interested in spiritual things that much.
Right. Right.
So yeah,
Yeah, that's good. Even, you might have a group that does games every week,
yeah,
you get together, play these games. And one day you're playing Sequence, one day you're playing Quirkle, whatever, and then you play a Portals and Prophets. And
right.
so it doesn't need to be like every week, but hey, that wasn't actually a fun game, and so introducing them to those components and again those connections that even if you're not trying to learn them, because of their accuracy, they they are integrated with it. I really like the idea of, and I think just as a whole, a lot of people have gotten away. Game nights have been around for almost 100 years, where
Yeah,
like this idea of the board games, really got popular in America in like the 20s and
yeah.
20s, 30s.
Due to
And
the
so,
depression,
yeah,
you know,
right. When you couldn't go and do something else, and you'd have a little game night.
you play Monopoly and feel wealthy.
Right, that's
Yeah,
right. That's right. And so here you have that opportunity. I think with these little devices everyone carries around, everyone disappears into their own little worlds.
right.
And gathering the family around, playing some games, I think it's a good way to introduce some of these concepts. Growing up, we used to play certain, again, typically they were more like Bible trivia, or they were Bible versions of other games,
Right.
like Bible categories or something like
Yeah.
that.
For Bible, apples to apples, where if you had the card that said God, it was like a trump card.
Right.
Yeah, then you could be like, well, you better pick my card because I
You
have God.
better. Yeah.
Or it, yeah,
that sort of thing, just introducing these concepts, learning these concepts from a younger age, so that when you are growing up and you're reading the Bible and it talks about they went to Hebron, I know where that is. I know what other events happened there. I know the connection and where it is geographically, and you kind of have that sense built in even from a younger age.
yeah. That's actually one thing I do really like about the Portals and Prophets is seeing the different events that happen in the same location. You're like, whoa, I didn't realize, that all this stuff happened in Jezreel.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting. A lot of times that's missed in our Bible study, but there are a lot of times where those connections, if we say, "Oh well, what else happened here?" Right.
Right.
So if you look at Joppa, right, this
Yeah.
is where Paul gets the vision to go out to the um, Gentiles. It's
Hmm.
also the place where the lumber was shipped in, but for the temple, right? The Gentile lumber to mix with the Jewish stone to make the temple. It
Yeah.
was also where Jonah,
Yeah.
he was told to go to the Gentiles in Nineveh, and instead he ran away. So you have all these connections with the Gentiles there. The
Yeah. That's
Gentile
interesting.
lumber with the with the Jewish stone to make the temple. Picture, we see the church there, and then you've got the prophet who refused to go to the Gentiles, and then the apostle who went to the Gentiles after. So when you look at those events, you can kind of make those connections just by themselves, which is quite a fascinating little
And
study.
and I think that if you're able to make a connection on your own, you're going to remember it better than if someone else makes it for you. If you feel
Yeah.
like you're the one that discovered it, the truth,
Yeah.
that's why I think when you hear like preachers, they talk about how no one probably got more out of the message than they did,
Yeah.
because they're the ones that made all the connections.
Yeah.
When they preach it, they're telling you the connections they made.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Now, how much, just a side note, how much time do you devote to these? This is kind of a side job you kind of pick at in your spare time?
This is my full time. I make no money in
Yeah.
any other way. No, it's basically just once all my obligations
Yeah.
are taken care of, it's one of my things that I do to just kind of I find it relaxing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a great thing. I think more people need that, especially with talents that they have, skills, to find an area that benefits others spiritually. I think there's a lack of that. I think a lot of people, they just kind of, there's my job, and then there's this, and then there's this, and it's all compartmentalized.
right.
And finding those areas where it spills over, and the whole body is benefiting each other, and
Right. Yeah,
just this,
yeah,
where this is a skill, a talent that you have, something you enjoy, it's relaxing to you, it's beneficial to others, it's
yeah,
I think that's great.
yeah. It's mostly most of my free time is either game design or doing. I still do some stuff with like rock, international with Paul and
Yeah.
stuff, just little projects.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So yeah, I really like these resources. And you say it's all fun and games, but I like that there's this underlying meaning to it, and it actually helps you, develops you, but allows for that fun interaction with others.
yeah.
So last question, I guess. If someone's like, wow, these games sound pretty cool, where can they find some Harmon games?
Yeah, Portals of Prophets is on Amazon, and probably so King of Glory. It is. It was on Amazon, and then Amazon decided to take it off, and so we're trying to figure out why that happened. But
Okay.
it should be back on in the next couple of weeks. But in the
Okay.
meantime, you can get that on the Rock International website. It's
Okay.
still available there.
Okay, and we'll put links to both
Yeah,
of those in the description. And then
yeah,
any idea with the parables, what timeline with that one?
yeah. I'm guessing the usual for that one. I probably will. We will do a Kickstarter campaign for it to raise the funds for that one. So that probably will be. I'm guessing that will probably be early next year. Would be my
Okay.
guess. Yeah,
Okay. Very
yeah.
good. Very good. So I'll make sure to put any links needed for that.
All right.
But yeah, very, very good resources. And I think just in general, this idea of thinking outside of direct instruction, I think we need to do more of that, just in churches in general. We get all creative at the kids clubs, the
Yeah.
Sunday schools, and then once you turn, however old, it's like now we can just talk to you. and
Right.
you'll
Yeah.
learn everything you need to know. But
Everyone loves that.
yeah.
That's right.
So I think, just that these games, they're not designed all for little kids. They're designed for all ages. Yeah, they're fun, they're engaging, they're challenging, and I really like that focus.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for introducing us to those.
No problem.